What is up, everybody? Jason, aka Jester, and for those of you in the States, happy 4th of July weekend. Nice 3-day weekend for everybody. For those of you not in the States, pay attention, because the piece of meat that you see in front of you right here, this is the gold standard when it comes to barbecue. This is a beef brisket. So everybody can learn something from this, and because of that, I wanted to teach a little something extra when it comes to this. Most people show the brisket, and then they'll show it trimmed, and then they'll show it seasoned, and then smoker, and then you see the slices, and your mouth waters, and it's wonderful. But not a lot of people put time into showing you how to separate the two pieces of meat that actually comprise this brisket, and it can be done at multiple different times. We're actually going to do it pre-cooked today, because I want to try something different, because I've never tried it before. Not going to fail, so it's not going to be one of those moments where it's like, oh, hey, Jester's maybe going to fail. No, I know what I'm doing, but I thought it was important to show you guys exactly how to go about doing this. The first thing you need to know is the brisket comprises of two particular pieces at a joint in the cow. It's going to be in the shoulder. This is going to be what they call the flat. This is going to be where you get your slices from, for your sandwiches or just for nice slices that you can eat. There's also another point up underneath here on the back side that we'll show you how to separate in a moment, called the point. Now this is going to be where your burnt ends and things like that come from. I want to separate them pre-cooked today because I want to season them separately and cook them separately and then deal with them separately as we're cooking them. So hopefully you guys stick with me. This might be a little bit of a longer video. We'll see. Anyway, first of all, when you get it, you're probably going to see this really nasty fat right on this side. This is really, you can almost hear it. It's hard fat. This is not going to render. So you're going to want to cut in, but you want to be careful to not take any of your meat because this stuff is not cheap. We paid about 70 bucks for this brisket. I don't want to waste a dime of that money. We will continue to just kind of work along and just keep going. And we're going to get some of this from the back side as well, but we're working on the top side at the moment. Okay, we'll come back to that part. The second part that you really need to pay attention to is the separation of the actual muscles. All right, in a brisket, this is going to look weird, but in a brisket, you can see the grain runs this way. And so we'll represent that with my hand. With the point at the bottom of this, there's a separate muscle that actually runs at that side of grain. So it's real easy to tell where you need to separate it. And that separation line, there's a layer of fat in between them. All you really need to do is start working your knife until you find that layer of fat. Very, very simple stuff here. And if you feel like you're getting into your meat, which we are here at the top, you just go a little bit deeper and you find that line. At that point, you just keep working all the way down to where it separates way down here. And now you can see there's a separate little piece of lean there. That's what I'm talking about. That's going to be not the flat, that's going to be the end of the point muscle. So now, you just kind of work back against the fat and keep slicing. I recommend just using the top inch or so of your knife and just keep working it all the way back until you're all the way across your brisket. And as the natural progression happens, you're going to start to get clear of your flat from your point. At that point, you just keep working it. And again, pay attention because there's still a line here, so you don't want to get into your actual good meat. But then you can start to cut back. And this is going to be where you can separate the two pieces completely. And that's going to be just like so. Now we have a brisket point that needs to be cleaned up, and we have a brisket flat that needs to be cleaned up. So let me get these separated and show you one at a time. All right, so we moved our flat over to the side. Basically at this point, all I want to do is I want to start taking some of this heavy fat off. This is going to be a labor of love, guys. This is not going to happen just voila, the fat's off of there. You don't want to take it all, but you also don't want this big clumpy fat that literally is not going to render. It will not come down and go back into the meat. So we're going to leave some on here, but not all of it by any stretch. And this is kind of the problem when you're cooking brisket, is that you end up losing a lot of weight on a brisket because this is kind of a fatty piece of meat. And if you know what you're doing, you can minimize that and just make it to where it's a little bit better off money-wise for your time and effort and your value of dollar, or whatever your currency might be. So on our flat, we're basically going to follow the same exact procedure that we did on the point. except for we're just going to be a little more careful to not get into too much of the meat. We're just going to take off the real heavy stuff. This is the actual backside of it. As you can see, there's knuckles of fat that are in there that need to come out because these big knuckles just will not render, and that's just kind of how this works. But you kind of just keep working it. You don't want to take all the fat off, but you do want to take the big majority of the heavy stuff. So now, as you can see, we've got this nice and trimmed up on this side. There's still fat, but there's nothing super clumpy or super tall. Let's flip that over, and this should be pretty much ready to go at this point. We're just going to take a little bit off there, and I think that's about it. Maybe that little corner there. Other than that, this thing's really not that bad on this side. Now, again, this is going to be kind of a divisive debate because some people say they don't like to trim their brisket at all. Some people say they trim all the fat off of it. Let me know in the comments how you guys do yours, or why you think one way is better than the other, because I think both have merit, but I just like to do this ahead of time so that I don't have to deal with it later, and I find that you get a better seasoning on everything as you go with it. So that's just me. When you don't have to go back and trim fat, your seasoning stays on your meat, doesn't come off on the fat. So let's talk about our seasoning. Speaking of which, today we're going to be using this, and this is a Woody's blend. This is that barbecue rub that I told you about, the all-purpose rub, but I've mixed it about 50-50 with a touch of cherry. It's a local thing, but it's a fruit-based rub, so it's got a little hint of sweet. I think it's going to go great on beef and going to work excellent with the salt that's in the Woody's rub. And for this, we just want to put on a really nice layer. Don't be afraid of seasoning the hell out of your brisket. It's going to have big flavor anyway. Beef is very hearty, and you really can't overdo it unless you're getting it to where it's super caked up. Turn it over. We're going to do the same thing on the back side. And from there, this is going to be ready to go in the smoker. Now, I'm not putting it in the smoker right now. What we're going to do is we're going to wait. I'm going to be up at dark 30 tomorrow morning to put this in. I probably won't be able to show you it going in, but just know that I'm going to be cooking for 2.5 hours on smoke. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know I'm using that Traeger pellet fed, and the smoke setting is what gets meat best smoked. So about 2.5 hours on smoke, and then I expect it's going to be 9 to 10 hours at 250 before this stuff is ready to go. I'm shooting for about 205, but I will cut in and show you guys the stuff in the smoker before we get there. I just need to season up that point now. We're going to let it sit overnight, and then I will be up before the crack of dawn getting this thing on the smoker. So I will see you guys at the next cut. So we're just past the halfway point, I would say. Sorry I wasn't able to bring you a little bit more there for the morning. Number one, it was just dark. Number two, it was just pouring rain all day. But as you can see, everything's looking great. We just passed about 7 hours. The point is ready to pull and cut down, and I'm going to go get set up to do that, and we are going to bring that to you next. So we kind of already started this process, and you can see kind of by the messy cutting board. But this is what your burnt ends are going to look like at this point. We've just cut these across there at about 1 inch, and then all you're going to do from there is just take them and cut them back to about 1 inch cubes, give or take. You can go bigger if you want, or you could go a little smaller. It's kind of just up to you at this point. From there, we're going to take and put them in the pan that did have everything sitting in there, so I cleaned that up and repurposed this. We're going to hit it with just a little bit more of our rub and kind of toss all that around. And then we're going to do the exact same with just a little bit of the Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. Not too much on the sauce. I kind of want the rub flavor to stand out more than, and the bark stand out more than the barbecue sauce. But just enough to kind of add a little extra flavor. So let me get this all done, and then we're going to cover it with foil once it's all mixed up. Back on the smoker. Probably going to be a couple hours worth of more cooking when it comes to those. But we'll check them here in an hour or hour and a half. And just about as predicted, about 2 hours after we got them foil wrapped and panned up, these beauties are just done. And you can see they just fall apart. I've had a couple of these and they literally just melt in your mouth. Very good recipe for burnt ends. The flat is surprisingly close as well. Hopefully I'll be able to get that out in the next 30 or 40 minutes, and then I'll show you the finale of this beautiful beef brisket. And at the end of a very long day, I'm rewarded with this. Just look at the smoke ring on that, and it is so freaking tender. When you take your slices, they basically pull apart with just a little bit of resistance. That's basically because we went to 205 with it. And if you taste it, It's just literally melting in your mouth. I cannot wait to get this on a bun with a little sauce and just go for it. Hopefully you guys like this kind of content. If you do, please give the video a like. Think about subscribing because I've got so much more stuff coming up in the near future. Also, being 4th of July weekend, anybody in the U.S., please stay safe. I don't want to hear about any fingers or toes being blown off. Although, you know, it's inevitable that somebody's going to have it happen. But hopefully everybody stays safe this weekend. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.